Why is there no buzz around Tennessee spring football right now? Seems a little weird, right? Football dominates this market. Why is there not a whole lot of buzz and juice around Tennessee football? We'll discuss, plus check in with recruiting and a couple other miscellaneous things at the end of the show. This is your Wednesday Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everybody, how are you doing? Welcome into a Wednesday show. I'm your host Eric Kane, and this is Locked On Vols. Every single weekday morning when you wake up on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host Eric Kane. I do radio in Knoxville. I write for the Rival site, and I appreciate you for making Locked On Vols your first listen each and every day. We missed Ward Wednesday last week. We're going to miss him today. Again, the schedules are pretty conflicting right now with spring football. We will get Josh Ward back on, no worries, maybe even later this week, but for sure he'll be back on routinely on Wednesdays coming up. But today, like I said, we're going to talk a little spring ball and the lack of buzz that's been generated for spring football this year. We'll check in on some recruiting. A lot of you guys have been wondering about recruiting with the latest Tennessee football commit, so we'll kind of have a State of the Union for recruiting for Tennessee football, and then we'll hit on a couple other things here to end the show. But, why is that? Why do you think that Tennessee football spring practice isn't generating a whole lot of buzz right now? It's a valid question. I understand we're in the off season. I understand Tennessee doesn't kick off its season for 5-6 more months. I get all that, but you guys know that when you follow the University of Tennessee, nothing moves the needle like Tennessee football. Point blank, you can be in the off season, you can have a great basketball season, but as soon as Tennessee football spring practice starts, it's how the boys looking, how them boys looking out there, and that's fine. I just don't get that sense so far this year. I think it's been a little bit different, and that's okay, and I'll tell you why. First and foremost, the number one reason, and this is kind of crazy to me, because, again, doesn't move the needle in this market typically, but Tennessee has a number one ranked baseball team in the country. And Tennessee baseball is good. At the time of this recording, I've got two computer screens I'm staring at right now. If you're watching on YouTube, you're seeing where I'm looking at. There's a webcam above one of the monitors, and on my left monitor, I've got Tennessee playing Tennessee Tech right now. I was unable to go to that game at Smoky Stadium, but at the time of this recording in the bottom of the third, Tennessee's leading 2-0 with a runner threatening in scoring position at second base. One out in the bottom of the third. Luke Lipsius is at the plate. So I'm dialed in on Tennessee baseball. Of course, I cover Tennessee baseball. I do my part for VolQuest.com. I host the Diamond Vols podcast twice a week with Ben McKee, so I'm locked in on baseball. But maybe you haven't been, and maybe you are now because you're going to Lindsey Nelson Stadium. You're trying to catch a weekend game, either Friday, Saturday, or Sunday because this team is so good. And from a national perspective, you've got guys from all over the country that write for various different polls and blogs and cover Tennessee baseball to some extent that are dialed in on Tennessee baseball, and they have never, ever been in their lives. So I think because Tennessee baseball is so good right now, just so good. I mean, it's not just that you're ranked number one. It's not just that you're leading the SEC East or the SEC. It's that you're number one across the board on all the 14 different polls. And the way you're winning, it's an exciting brand of baseball, and it's fun. And so, much like Tennessee basketball kind of endured itself to the fan base, with Grant and Admiral, and Lamonte, and Jordan Bowden, and Kyle Alexander, and Fulkerson even, a couple years ago, I feel like that's what Tennessee baseball is doing right now, and you're able to see behind the curtain. You're able to see some of these players in these interviews that are fun. Ben McKee does an awesome job with his Extra Innings podcast, mini podcast, when he catches up with a player. It's been every Monday at VolQuest.com. You guys should check that out. So I do think one big reason is because Tennessee baseball is so good. Also, here's another reason why I believe there's just not a whole lot of buzz around Tennessee football right now. Tennessee spring football. And again, everybody's on board with Tennessee football. Everybody likes Josh Heupel for the most part. Everybody would agree that this past fall was a good start for Josh Heupel. I'm not saying that's not the conversation right now. The conversation is, why, for the most part, are fans not clinging to every word coming out of Tennessee football spring practice like in normal years? I'll tell you another reason, and I think this is bigger than the baseball thing, to be completely honest with you. For the first time in God knows how long, since Josh Dobbs was here on campus, we've had questions about who Tennessee's starting quarterback is going to be entering the new fall season. Barring injury, Hendon Hooker's your quarterback, and that's not changing. And so that is one big storyline evaporated from spring practice. The second one, everybody was wondering about Josh Heupel last year. What's this offense look like? What's Josh Heupel like? How does he run his practices? How are the players liking Josh Heupel? How's the chemistry going? How's the locker room? We know that it's good. We know that these players love playing for Josh Heupel. So that storyline is evaporated. Those were two huge storylines at this point in time last year that are just not here right now, okay? Hendon Hooker's your quarterback. I remember going to spring practice, and again, you guys have heard me say this, and if you hear me on the radio, I'm always up front. I'm not acting like I'm there watching practice all day, every day. That's not allowed. It used to be allowed. Man, would I have enjoyed covering a Tennessee football team or any football team where I could stay for the entire practice 5 days a week or however many days they let you in. But that's just not the case anymore. What we get is 3 periods. We walk in, we see the tail end of stretching, we watch them do tackling circuits, ball security drills on offense, then we watch them go outside. They get into individual periods where the defense is primarily doing the same thing every single day to where the defensive line's on the bags, the linebackers are under the cage, working on stance and steps. The DBs are kind of walking through some coverages and kind of doing some ball drills. The offensive line is on the blocking sled or pairing off into left side, right side, working off in tandems. The tight ends are off by themselves usually, or the tight ends are joining receivers and quarterbacks as they throw routes on air. That's what we see every single day. Typically, it's the same thing. They're doing the same things that we get to see. But you get to take roll and see who's there, who's not. We get to see who's throwing the football well that day. We get to see how the coaches are coaching up certain players. If they pull anybody aside, give them extra talking twos, extra pointers, all that type of stuff. So there is benefit. I'm not trying to say that what they give us right now is crap. They could always give us more, don't get me wrong. But there are benefits from what we get to do and see. But I think, primarily it's the lack of access that I think also for the viewing periods compared to in recent years, a couple years ago. That's nothing new right now, and that's nothing that Josh Heupel, you go to Florida, South Carolina, Ole Miss, anywhere else in the SEC, it's the same way. So it's not a Josh Heupel thing. I wish we could see more practice, but that's a bigger issue. But what I was going to say is I remember going last year, whenever Josh Heupel was here, brand new, whenever Hendon Hooker was here, brought in by Jeremy Pruitt, now a holdover, whenever Harrison Bailey was here, whenever Brian Maurer was here. And the the questions were every single day, how the quarterbacks, how they throwing, who looked the best, who threw the best ball, who threw the tightest spiral, who threw it the furthest, any interceptions, how are the quarterbacks looking, how's Harrison Bailey, how's Harrison Bailey, how's Harrison Bailey. Those were the questions we got every single day, and none of that's there this week. None of that's there this spring. So, long story short, this team's got some work to do. This team has holes. Wide receiver, you need to find 2 of them. Left tackle, got to find the left tackle. Defense, secondary, what are you going to do at cornerback? Defense, secondary, are you going to stick with the 2 same guys at safeties? Who's going to be your star guy? Who's going to play the other linebacker spot? Depth. There's questions all over the place, and we talk about it all the time. But the 2 big things, how's Josh Heupel looking to practice, Tennessee's new head coach? He's no longer Tennessee's new head coach. And who's the quarterback? How are the quarterbacks looking? We know Hendon Hooker's the quarterback, so really the questions this go around has been, how's Taven Jackson looking? I know, is he throwing the ball well? What's he learning from Hendon Hooker? And that's fine. But for the most part, there's not been a whole lot of buzz this spring football practice, and I appreciate you guys for reading my practice observations, tuning into my practice reports, hearing me on the radio, and hearing me on this podcast. And I know that there's still a lot of people that take in that stuff, don't get me wrong, but when you compare it to years past, it's kind of wild. There's not been a whole lot of buzz like normal for Tennessee spring football, and that's okay. I think the coaching staff's fine with that, and that doesn't mean you're not a Tennessee fan. It's not what I'm trying to say. It just is there's not huge storylines, the lack of access in terms of practice viewing. We get to talk to a ton of players, and that's awesome. But also, I think that there's so much to do right now. Masters weekend, and we're just coming off Masters weekend. At the start of spring practice, it was the NCAA tournament and the SEC tournament, and of course, your number 1 team in the country by a large margin, the Tennessee Baseball Volunteers. I think all those are contributing factors. So, again, it was just a fun conversation to have and kind of poke around to, and maybe you guys have some other things right now, and you can add to it. The DMs are open at _Caner, but just something interesting that I learned and that I was kind of viewing during this whole thing. And I just thought we'd talk about it. So that's what we got here. And for spring practice, of course, spring practice will end later this week. And we will have to see exactly what Josh Heupel says Thursday about the final scrimmage of the spring. All right, we'll come back. We'll give a State of the Union address in terms of all recruiting when we come back. But first, Built Bar. It's the time of the year where pretty much maybe you've given up on your New Year's resolutions, but you don't necessarily need to because swimsuit season, it's arrived. Not for the most part, because who knows, it could be 30 degrees tomorrow, but swimsuit season's here. I mean, I'm going to Tybee Island here in about a month, actually a month from the day of this recording, and I'm going to be back at Longboat Key at the end of May. I've got another beach trip coming up in July, so I'm looking forward to getting out on the water, and I'm eating those Built Bars because they are so tasty, 100% covered in chocolates. They are a better alternative to you than, obviously, a candy bar that's stuffed with about 240 calories. Built Bars are 17 grams of protein infused with protein and also just 130 calories, just 4 net carbs, just 4 grams of sugar. They've got tons and tons of selection just for you as well. You've got the mint brownie, coconut almond, berry, coconut, mint brownie, all that type of stuff. I know I just repeated myself. I don't have my talking points in front of me, but any selection, any type of flavor you can think of, chances are they've created it over there at Built.com. So right now, once you go to Built.com, use that promo code LOCK15, you're going to get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off. That is at Built.com. All right, guys, welcome back in here to your Wednesday edition of Locked On Vols. I'm Eric Kane. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen each and every day. Now, time for a big announcement real quick. Starting Thursday, April 28th, go ahead and tune in to the Lock On NFL Draft's live coverage of the 2022 NFL Draft. All 3 days of real-time analysis from our extensive lineup of experts and insiders. And for those of you dying to know about your team and who they'll take, catch Odyssey and Locked On NFL's mock draft special hosted. That's by Brian Peacock and former scout Matt Williamson of the Peacock and Williamson NFL show all week leading into the first pick. Where can you find it? Locked On NFL Draft Live. That's on the Locked On NFL YouTube page. And Odyssey NFL Mock Draft. That is on Odyssey and Locked On NFL Draft podcast feeds. When are they? Well, it's April 28th through at 7 o'clock through April 29th at 6:30. And the Odyssey NFL Mock Draft, it's April 18th, 22nd, and the 25th. All right, that was a whole lot at you, but pretty much what I'm trying to say is check out the Locked On NFL Draft. Check out the Odyssey NFL Mock Draft as we head on closer to the NFL Draft later this month. All right, so it just dawned on me. I looked over at, so I told you last second I got two monitors in front of me. My laptop, which I stream via Restream these episodes, it's over here to my right, and I looked over midway through that last segment, and I noticed old little Restream was not getting signal. It's like a cell phone. I've explained this to you guys before. It's like a cell phone service. Like they give you 4 bars, and for some reason the product decides to be just complete crap. So you guys know me. I'm never going to shy away from a product that is supposed to work, that you're investing in. When it doesn't work, I'm gonna tweet at them, and I'm gonna be very 80-year-old man, get off my lawn. But hey, I feel like it's valid. So apologies if in post-production I couldn't use the video at all, and you're just staring at a graphic on YouTube but hearing my voice. So apologies there if that were to happen. Hopefully we'll get that video component back up for tomorrow. Okay, so Tennessee had a commit yesterday in 3-star defensive lineman Nathan Robinson from Greenbrier, Tennessee, and we broke him down, and I told you kind of what makes him ticks and how Rodney Gardner just had to have him, and he got him, and hey, that's good enough for me. People are like, oh, 3-star defensive lineman from Greenbrier, Tennessee, what's so special at him? Why is Tennessee wanting him? And that's valid. It is what it is. Plus, he's new to the position. He's played linebacker in the past. I covered him all about him on yesterday's episode, so you can go check that out if you missed it. But point of the matter is, Rodney Gardner had to have him. He wanted him. And if Rodney Gardner had to have him, then hey, who am I to question that, right? Who is any of us to question that? A guy that's put in so many guys in the NFL draft, so it just is what it is at that point. But what about the rest of Tennessee's committed class, and who are some of the top targets that Tennessee is after right now? Well, I'll tell you right now, of course, Tennessee has 6 commits. Nathan Robinson was that 6th commit. It starts with quarterback 5-star Nico Iamaleava, who was committed to the University of Tennessee. You got 4-star Ethan Davis. He is a tight end. Then you go into your 3 stars. Aiden Bussell, offensive lineman from Mount Juliet, Tennessee. Nate Spillman, wide receiver from Lipscomb, Tennessee, or Nashville. He goes to Lipscomb Academy. 3-star defensive back who is a freak athlete, Jack Luttrell. And then you got 3-star that I mentioned a moment ago in Nathan Robinson. What about some of the other guys? Who's kind of on that big board for Tennessee football? Who were some prospects and guys that Tennessee is involved in? And who were some names that could potentially be joining this class in the future? Well, I kind of broke it down position by position, and I put all these names off the top of my head. Then I went back and checked my notes and everything and added a few more. These are some names to be on the lookout for. And I understand all you guys are not recruiting people, and that's fine, but some names and people that Tennessee is in on, Tennessee's after, and Tennessee could add to this class. I know a lot of you guys are curious about it. We'll start with the running back position. Well, quarterback's done. Okay, you've got your quarterback for this class, Nico Iamaleava. Tennessee doesn't need to bring in two. I'd be surprised if you ever bring in 2 quarterbacks ever again in the same class. It's been done in the past, don't get me wrong, but now with the transfer portal, there's absolutely no need for it. So Nico Iamaleava is your quarterback. You're set there at the signal caller position. At running back, here's kind of the big board on players that Tennessee likes. Trevion Webb, who is a really talented running back from the state of Florida. Jeremiah Cobb is a really talented all-purpose back, 4-star that Tennessee really enjoys. Roderick Robinson's a bigger type back from California. Tennessee likes him an awful lot. And then a guy that was on campus earlier this week taking in, I guess it was Monday's practice, was Sam Singleton from Fleming Island down there in Florida. All those guys look the part of being an SEC running back. And again, you don't need to bring in all 4 of those, but you probably want to add 2, right? Offensive lineman. So Tennessee already has 1 offensive lineman in Aiden Bussell. You always want to add around 4 offensive linemen per class. Here's the big board for offensive linemen. Okay, you've got Lucas Simmons, who was on campus this past weekend, and Tennessee loves Lucas Simmons. He is a 4-star. He is from Sweden. He's now at Clearwater International Academy down in Florida. He's been here for 9 months. I put a story up there at VolQuest. Actually, it might be posted by the time you're hearing this. It should be coming out on Wednesday, breaking down his visit. But Tennessee loves him. Wilcom Formby from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Yes, I understand what your fear is there, that Alabama will get him, but Tennessee's very much in Wilcom Formby, a 4-star offensive lineman. Bryson Sanders from Baylor School, in-state. Tennessee likes him on the interior, and we'll have to see if Sanders chooses the Volunteers. But some other SEC schools are involved there. And then Knoxville Catholic, Trevor Duncan. Trevor Duncan is a guy that is listed as a defensive lineman, and he very well could play a little defensive lineman, but he has offensive tackle written all over. And he's about 6'7". He is athletic. He is long. He's lengthy. He's about 280 pounds. He is a guy that can play offensive tackle and make a whole lot of money one day, in my opinion. So that's kind of the offensive line board that I have it right now. Tennessee loves those guys for sure. You look at wide receiver. Of course, Tennessee already has Nate Spillman in the boat. Tennessee would love to bring in the top 2 priority guys are Cornell Tate and Kyler Casper. You guys have heard me talk about those 2 before. It's probably a one or the other type situation. I spoke with Cornell Tate when he was leaving campus on Sunday, and he had a blast. He really, really enjoyed his time here. He's been up here a couple of times and likes Kelsey Pope, likes Josh Heupel, likes all that. But, Ohio State's going to be in there. Notre Dame's going to be in there. That one's going to be tougher to get, in my opinion. Kyler Casper's a guy that loves him some Nico Iamaleava. Those 2 guys are close. Tate's close with Nico as well. He talks to Nico too. But Kyler and Nico are very, very close. And Kyler Casper from Arizona, 4-star, very talented wide receiver. I think of the 2, I would say Casper's more realistic, but we'll have to see. But those are the 2 priorities. It's probably a one or the other type situation, but we'll see. We'll see. Noah Rogers from North Carolina is up there in the Tier 1, and then Justin Brown from the Mid-State, and Devin Hyatt, of course. Those are your wide receiver priorities on the board right now. Let's move over to defense. Ethan Davis is the tight end commit already in this class, and so really you don't have a need for a tight end right now in this class. We'll go to defense. Here's some edge presence players that Tennessee is high on. Caleb Herring, the second ranked player in the state of Tennessee for the class of 2023, brother of brother of Elijah Herring, who it was a 2022 signee for the University of Tennessee, and who is on campus right now. I think Tennessee is in excellent position there. Rico Walker. Rodney Gardner loves him some Rico Walker. Rodney Gardner recruited Rico Walker's dad way back in the day. 4-star talented athlete from North Carolina. He was on campus last weekend, and Tennessee looks to be trending pretty well there as well. Derek LeBlanc, and he was a guy that Tennessee wanted to make some moves with this weekend. He was on campus. It appeared that went well. That's a guy that Tennessee really, really likes. And then Chadavion Bradley is a guy that Tennessee likes as well. Just a matter of getting him on campus, really, in that one. You move on with some more defensive line prospects. Vic Burley's a guy that's been here a couple times. Tennessee likes Vic Burley an awful lot. Hunter Osborne, a 4-star interior. Well, he can play the edge too if needed. More of a traditional defensive end 5 technique guy. He is a 4-star from Alabama. Tennessee likes him. And then Darren Reed is also in that conversation as well, a 4-star from Florida or Georgia. So all of those guys, versatile guys. Herring is an edge player for sure. A couple of those other guys are edge players and can move around on the defensive side of the football. But those are your defensive linemen, per se, if you will, that Tennessee has on its big board. Move to linebacker. C.J. Allen was up on campus this week. He's a 3-star, but Tennessee loves them some C.J. Allen, and C.J. Allen loves him some Brian Jean-Marie. Brian Jean-Marie did an excellent job this past weekend, and in talking with him and his family. So that's priority. Jeremiah Thielander, who's been on campus a couple of times. He was on campus earlier in March, and honestly, I thought that he was close to maybe committing to Tennessee. He was feeling it that much, but I think Tennessee is in the driver's seat for Jeremiah Thielander. And Kevon Thunderberg, a 3-star from Illinois, is also on the linebacker board. And then we'll get to the defensive backs. Christian Conyer, top-ranked, top-priority cornerback on this board. It's going to come down between Tennessee and Kentucky. I think Tennessee's still sitting in the driver's seats. He is from Bowling Green, Kentucky, 4-star, very talented player. Zabari Sandy, who was on campus earlier on Monday taking in practice. Tennessee likes them. Some Zabari Sandy, 4-star safety from Washington, D.C. He is a priority. Brandon Strozier is a guy that has shot up the charts, and it's trending. I think Tennessee's still sitting well. I don't know if they're still the leader, but Tennessee was the leader for sure. Clemson might be the leader right now, but Tennessee is very much in it for Brandon Strozier. Sylvester Smith, I think Tennessee's in good shape there, 4-star safety from Alabama, and Tennessee also, I believe, is the leader for Zach Myers, a 4-star athlete safety from North Carolina. So again, I know a lot of you guys aren't recruiting guys or gals, and that's fine, but a lot of you guys have been asking me, what's the big board look like? Who are some other prospects Tennessee are on that can add to this class before it's all said and done? That is my big board, and I think that's very close to Tennessee's big board as well. I've got a couple of notes here in segment number 3 I want to throw at your way, including a really nice stat line the University of Tennessee sent out earlier this week. I want you to hear it. Very, very impressive stuff. But before that, I want to remind you guys about Rock Auto. With all these ever-increasing numbers and makes and models, it's now impossible for you or your local chain of auto parts store to stock up on all the parts you need. Why endure the often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders their parts from their computer, choosing only the brands that their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers, you have access to rockauto.com in your home and in your pocket. Save time and money when using rockauto.com. Rock Auto is a family-owned business serving it to do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto's prices are always so reliably low. They've got everything you possibly need, from brake boards to tail lamps, motor oils, even some new carpets. Go explore their easy-to-use website today and find the solution to your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car and your truck. Right Locked On in the How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit my friends at rockauto.com. Just a couple minutes left here on this Wednesday edition of Locked On Vols. I know I kind of got off there talking a lot of recruiting, and we might be a little behind schedule right now, but that is okay. This is Locked On Vols, your first listen. Can't thank you enough for hanging out with me and checking out the show each and every day. All right, so Tennessee sent this out. I'm sure you saw it all over on social media. It was circulating there a couple days ago. I meant to put this in yesterday's show, but I forgot all about it, to be honest with you. Tennessee sent this out via the athletics department, and it's a really, really unique stat. So Tennessee baseball is the unanimous number one team across the board right now. And since that has become a thing, the Tennessee Athletics Department has accomplished a very, very rare feat. Tennessee now stands along future Southeastern Conference member Texas as the only Division I schools ever to own the number one national ranking in each of the following sports: football, women's basketball, men's basketball, softball, and baseball. Those are the big sports on campus. Sure, football pays the bills for everybody else, right? Men's basketball is right behind it. Women's basketball, softball, and baseball. Those are the big ones, okay? The Volunteers have ascended to number one nationally in the major college football polls during 4 different seasons. In women's basketball, a sport in which the Lady Vols claimed 8 national championships, Tennessee has spent parts of 17 different seasons, ranked number one in the country. Men's basketball, meanwhile, has twice stood atop the national polls, most recently for a 4-week span during the 2018-2019 season. Of course, we remember that. Tennessee softball spent parts of 2 seasons, 2007 and 2014, ranked number one as well. And each of the 5 sports have risen to the top of the national rankings within the last 24 years, with 3 claiming the number one spot during the last decade. So, pretty unique stat there when you think about it. Men's basketball, women's basketball, football, baseball, and softball. Tennessee is only one of 2 Division I programs ever to be ranked number one in each of those 5 sports for a period of time. That is very, very impressive. Tennessee and Texas furthermore saying, hey, who's the real UT, right? And I'm sure everybody listening right now would say the University of Tennessee. All right, moving on. We had a late submission for Twitter Tuesday yesterday that I forgot to get to. So Raw_Vols, appreciate you for checking out the show, man. And you chimed in. Do you think that we will see James Pierce play as a true freshman? Same question for Caleb Webb and Tyree West. Yeah, I think those guys are players, right? Caleb Webb might be more of a developmental guy. They all are. Don't get me wrong. They all are. Caleb Webb is a guy that I think has such a bright future in this offense. I don't think he's ready right now, but it might not be long before he is ready. Maybe he doesn't start the season off by seeing a lot of the field. Maybe as the season goes on, he does. Tennessee found their 3 receivers midway through the year, or really about a third of the way through the year, and then stuck with those 3, and then Jalen Hyatt rotated in a little bit. You didn't see another receiver really at all, unless Velus got hurt. You saw Walker Merrill go in there during Ole Miss. Of course, Javonte Payton got hurt. You saw Ramel Keaton play a little bit towards the end of the season. But after that Florida game, they were pretty much setting their 3 guys. So if Caleb Webb doesn't crack that initial starting rotation, it might take him a little while, but I think he's long, lengthy, explosive on the outside. He's everything Tennessee wants and is looking for in an outside receiver. So I don't know about how much he'll play as a true freshman, but I think he's going to be a good one. James Pierce, pass rusher, raw, developmental guy, but Tennessee ain't got many Leos, right? You got Byron Young, you got Roman Harrison, and then you're going to get a lot of James Pierce and Joshua Joseph this year, I promise you. They'll have to refine their skills, but quickness, strength. James Pierce was a big signing day get for Tennessee, and I expect you'll see some of him at least a little bit on that defense. And then finally, Tyree West, the biggest signing day get for Tennessee, and Josh Heupel. He has had a really good spring. He will be the backup to Byron Young in that 5 technique, that more traditional defensive end type role. He's a guy. He is. He made some plays the other day. He made a sack. He jumped up and tipped a pass at line of scrimmage that led to an interception and then led to a pick 6. He's a player. He has impressed me for sure. So I do believe as you see him continue to benefit from being in a strength and conditioning program, as he continues to refine his skills and learn at the college level, I do believe you'll see a whole lot of Tyree West. Appreciate you chiming in, man, and sorry I didn't get to it on Twitter Tuesday's episode, but anytime you guys have any questions, either I'll answer them on another episode that week, or I will bookmark them and hold on to them for next week's Twitter Tuesday. That'll do it, guys. Appreciate you tuning in for another episode of Locked On Vols. Hope it was entertaining, and hope you come back for more later on in the week. Now that you checked out Locked On Vols, check out Locked On NFL Mock Draft. The guys bring the front office to life every single day. They evaluate prospects, the NFL Draft. It's just a couple of weeks away. Check out Locked On NFL Draft right after Locked On Balls, which is your first listen. Guys, I appreciate it. We'll get some guests on to end the show. And until then, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, everybody.